All right, today we are starting a new unit called functions. And a lot of what we're going to talk about in this unit is related to thinking about an input versus an output. So eventually we're going to talk about equations that have inputs and outputs. But we're going to start off with these secret codes. And the codes kind of look like graphs, but they're a little bit different than graphs as well. So I'm going to be referencing this sheet here. And as I go through the problems on my next slide, I want you guys to record the answers in this spot here for code number 1. So this is where you should write the answers for code number 1. And then down here would be where you should record your answers for code number 2 as I eventually go through code number 2. So I'm going to go to the next slide now, but you should write down the answers as I go through that based on those codes. So, all right, we're going to start with code number 1 here. And so what we're going to do is think about our x-axis down here as the input, and anything on the y-axis over here is the output. So I'm going to be thinking about making a code for the word math based on what we see here. Our letters for math are going to be the input letters. So the letters M, A, T, and H, I'd like you to write that down on your page. You can write input equals M, A, T, H next to code number 1 there. So go ahead and do that. Input equals M, A, T, H. And now we're going to figure out what the output would be, what the secret code would be for the word math. So since math is the input, we're going to find the letter M for math on the input side. So we find M down here, and then we're going to follow that up to the blackened square here, and then follow it over to what letter it goes with. So the letter M goes with the letter R for an output. So now you can write output over here, and the first letter of the output would be letter R. So R is the output for letter M. Then we'll go to letter A, because A is the next letter in math. We'll find A on the input and follow it up to our black square there, and then over, so basically right there. So then that gets us to letter F. So our next letter for the secret code is letter F. Our next letter for math is T. So find T on the input, follow that up to the graph, and then over, and you can see T would go to an output of the letter Y. And finally, the letter H is an input, and following that up and over gets us to letter M. So the secret code word for the word math ends up as RFYM. It's not going to actually seem like a word, but it's more just a mix of letters that goes with the particular input word that we had. So if you were going to decode it, you would have to work back from there. All right. Example number 2, same idea. And if you want to see if you can kind of figure that out. But we're going to start with the letter Y this time as the input. So Y is the input. Let's take a look at where that would be. So Y is over here. We follow it up and then over. So letter Y goes with letter D. So you can write down input equals yellow, and then we're going to figure out what the output would be. So D. E. Find E on the input, go up to the graph, and then over that goes with J. L, there are 2 L's, so we'll be able to knock off 2 letters with this one. So find L, go over, and you get letter Q, so D, J, Q, Q, because there's 2 letter L's, so 2 Q's. O, follow it up, and then over it goes with T, and then W, follow it up, and then over, and that goes with B. So the code word for yellow is DJQQTB. Again, it's not supposed to seem like a word because we've put it into code. All right, the last of the examples for code number 1 here is going to be down on the bottom. So you can write this one also next to code number 1. So this one has, notice the output is given to us. So instead of an input, we have the output. So what you see here is a code word. It's not supposed to make sense, but if we were able to decode it, we should be able to figure out what word that goes with. Since that is the output for letter W, that means that instead of going down on the bottom to find W, we're going to go over on the output side over here and look at where W is. And so since it is the output, we're going to follow it over to our graph and then down. So kind of the reverse of what we were doing in the first couple examples. So W goes with the letter R. Z is an output. We'll find Z and then go down, and that goes with the letter U. So RU. L, find letter L on the output, and that goes with letter G. G on the output goes with B, and D on the output, going back to the input, followed all the way over, and it goes down to Y. So if we are given the output, we should be able to decode it, work backwards to figure out what the input would be, and that actually should be a word, and in this case, it is the word rugby. All right? So let's go to code number 2 now. Now, code number 2 is the same example, but it's a different code. It's the same idea, but it's a different code. So if you look here, we start off with the input algebra. So I'd like you to write this down next to code number 2, input algebra. And then we're going to figure out what the output would be. So if we input algebra and go to our input, so remember now we're back to the input again, so we're going to go down on the bottom, that's where our inputs are. The letter A is right here, so follow that up, and that goes with H for an output. L, follow it up. Now that goes with B, but you'll notice something different here as well, because above the letter L, if we keep going up, we also get to another letter that could be an output there. So L for an input could go with B for an output, but it could also go with S. So HB or HS could work here. Now if we find G, G is one that has only one output. That would be the letter N. E has only one output. That goes with L. B has only one output. That goes with I. R, okay, R is another one that has two outputs. So if we follow that up and over, that goes with H. But R also could have an output that goes with Y. So H or Y could be that one. And then A, we had already figured out that was the letter H. Okay, so R went with H and A went with H. Okay, so something a little bit different happened here. In these two slots, we had two possible outputs right here instead of one possible output. So that's going to come into play a little bit. It makes the coding a little bit more complicated because you're not sure, should I use the B or should I use the S? Should I use the H or the Y? Because they're both outputs for the same input letter. So keep that in mind as we go through the next one. Now, if you want to go through and just take a minute and figure out what Beyonce would code to here as your second example, go ahead and write that on the page.